There's plenty of seats, so if you all would come in and have a seat, if I could have everyone in the front or in the back move over, be great. Yeah. All right, for this next talk, it was going to be with Claire Winslow, who is a master's student, but she was unable to make it today. She's a little bit under the weather. So we're going to have a previous speaker, Nottingham, give this talk. And it's about the management tool, Decoy. There we go.
Can you hear me? All right, great. All right, so I'm going to continue the trend of giving grad student talks. My favorite thing. So preparing for a talk starting last night. Bear with me. All right, so I'm going to talk about a project that Claire Winslow has been doing in my lab over the last year. So I think everyone knows the background on spotted wing Drosophila. This is a top crop pest for blueberries and raspberries. It's created a huge amount of damage worldwide, and it's really just ramped up our insecticide programs for small fruits, going from 3 sprays per year up to 8, even 10 in some places where pressure is really high with this pest. We're seeing resistance develop. We're seeing secondary pest outbreaks because of it. So basically we need to try some new stuff, see if we can develop some IPM tools so we're not just spraying and putting all of our eggs in that basket. So there are some other IPM techniques that have kind of been under development for spotted wing over the last few years, but none of them are particularly well studied at this point. And some things are stuff that you're already doing, or maybe you don't even necessarily have a ton of control over. There's monitoring, but we don't really have a threshold for spotted wing. Obviously, correctly identifying that this spotted wing is what you have, but if you're in Northwest Washington, guess what? You definitely have it. Sanitation, so removing berries, these are just good practices. There is biological control out there now, but it's not enough to fully control the pest or prevent injury. And then, of course, chemical control, which is the thing that we are almost 100% relying on. So our lab is looking for new solutions. One that was of particularly interest to us is this Decoy product. So this is a product that was invented by entomologist out of Oregon State University, Von Walton. This is a ovipositional attractant. So it's a highly attractive bait product that's made out of just concentrated cherries, basically mixed with like some gum products and gelatin and cellulose, citric acid, things like that. And what makes it so attractive is that the fatty acids in it are super concentrated, and the spotted wing just really like that. So the idea is that the spotted wing are going to hone in on this decoy and lay their eggs in it and not lay as many eggs, or it would be lovely if they didn't lay any eggs in the berry fruit. So some of the initial research that was done on this, it started, of course, in lab trials. You can see over here on this side of the screen, they were getting really good efficacy just in these basic choice tests where spotted wing were put into cages with berries versus decoy versus water, things like that. And they were almost always choosing decoy. This is just a water control difference, but in actual comparisons to berries, they're seeing anywhere from 50 to 70% reductions. And then we took this to the field, or when they took this to the field in Oregon and California, where the initial testing was done, they were seeing again pretty good efficacy in almost all trials they did at through a bunch of crops, from cherries to wine grapes to blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. Pretty much everything was showing reduced infestation, at least in terms of eggs in the fruit, and then up to as much as 78% reduction in infested fruit. So we thought this was pretty interesting, and coming from a background in tree fruit, I saw this as like something that could be very similar to a mating disruption, where it's like a material that you put out there and it just reduces your overall pressure. It's not a silver bullet, but it can at least keep your pressure down. So then your spray programs just get better, and you can potentially start integrating some more selective materials in there as opposed to just continuous reliance on mostly pyrethroids and some organophosphates. So we set up a trial in 2023. This was kind of a bit of a last minute thing because I didn't really know about this until 6 months into starting my position here, but I thought it was interesting, so I figured we'd set it up in some untreated fields. So we had a blueberry field that didn't get sprayed, and then I'm sorry, a raspberry field that wasn't getting sprayed and a blueberry field that wasn't getting sprayed. And we kind of divided a few of these 1 to 2 acre plots in half and put Decoy in them at the rate of 50 containers per acre. So in this first trial, we didn't see a significant difference, but it was trending in the right direction. So we're starting to see a little bit of a reduction there in Decoy, at least in terms of the average. So to me, it's like, well, this is our first time doing this. That's at least it's trending right. Let's give this another shot and see if we can make some adjustments to make this thing work. You know, with any product, whether it's an insecticide or something like this, you have to dial it in order to get it to work if it's going to work. So this is when we brought in Claire to start working on this as a master's student. So she started by just, let's see if we can make this thing work in the lab. So she set up some choice tests. And something I'll just mention is that the formulation of this has kind of changed over time. So this is this little puck that it's in now. You can see it here too. This is the current formulation. It didn't always look like this. And I'll get to that at the end of the presentation, what the older formulations were. But we wanted to, make sure that this in this formulation works in the lab and just in general, but also test to see if this is going to work for us in Washington, where it hasn't been tested. So Claire set up these choice tests at the beginning of this year to see if we could make this thing work just in like kind of a perfect situation. And again, we have the same outcome where it's trending in the right direction, but we're not seeing a significant difference yet. And part of this is that we have like super high variability in the controls. So we are getting this, like the average reduction is happening in the Decoy, but it's not significant, obviously, because we have all this variability in our controls. So we're trying this in the field, and we try to create a reduced variability situation this year. So we just used blueberries, and we used an organic plot at the Sakuma Brothers orchard or fields to kind of have a situation where we have spotted wing infestation, but not so much that it drowns everything out. And something that I kind of like to do is, if something doesn't work the first time, double the rate and try it again. So we went for that approach. So we had a standard rate on half of or a third of our blocks, and then a double rate on the other third. And then, of course, untreated control, and everything was getting a standard organic program, which was mostly weekly sprays of Entrust. So the way that we evaluated this was we put the Decoy out. We started kind of midsummer with the Decoy in the field before fruit ripening, and we replaced it every 3 weeks. And then once berries started to ripen up, we would go out there almost weekly and collect berries and put them in these incubation containers and see what flies emerged, but also dissect the berries for larvae as well. So in this year, actually, we have the opposite effect. So we have trending in the wrong direction. Still not significant, but we're not seeing any control from the Decoy product in the trials from this year. So I thought this was, I was watching Alan Schreiber's talk yesterday, and he was talking about how depressing all these other talks were. I was like, okay, I got one for you, Alan. This is pretty depressing too. We don't want to see trending in the wrong direction. We want these to be the opposite. So, we're not getting the results we want to see, but this is still important information. If it doesn't work, we want to know that this is commercially available. So, if basically it's not going to work in Washington, then we need to be able to tell growers that. However, I wouldn't throw in the towel just yet. For one, again, the formulation has changed. So we're testing a new formulation. This is what the old formulation looked like. It was much wetter, kind of like this to me looks like it would be more attractive to a fly to ovipositin as opposed to that harder puck. So that may be part of the problem. The difficulty with this was that it was hard to keep it moist. So that could be an issue. It could be a fact that we're not doing it on a big enough scale. We still have these outside areas that are heavily infested, and we could just be, allowing like even pulling more flies in, and we just need to treat a larger area instead. But again, we just need to keep. I think we got to keep testing this just to be sure. So what we're going to do going forward with this is to not quite give up yet, I would say. However, we're going to test it again in 2025 just to give it the true effort that it needs. But we're not going to ask for commodity funding for it this year, just because I don't feel like the industry should have to put their money into something that we're not at least kind of confident in. But from a research standpoint, it still deserves another year of testing, I would say. The first year was kind of a bit of a throwaway because we did it at the last minute. And we still are processing some of the data. Claire still has berries that are incubating currently. So I'll also just reiterate the fact that, we test pesticides every year and they fail a lot. So we see these in our trials, not significant results, but we continue to test it. So it's worth at least another shot at it here. But with that, I want to thank Claire for putting this together. She did a great job, and it's tough when you're a new student and you're not able to make your product work. I want to thank the Commission on Integrated Pest Management, the Washington Blueberry Commission, and then Terramore for supplying us with tons of Decoy, and also Sakuma Brothers for letting us work in their field this year. So I'll be happy to take any questions you guys have at this point. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm coming up.
So this strap that's put on the drip that's off the ground. So what happens when you put your harvester through that?
We haven't seen an issue with it. It was fine. I think maybe one or two of them gets whacked, but it clips on there pretty well, so it doesn't get knocked off too easily. And even if it does, the decoy's still in the field, and you have to replace them every 3 weeks. But I mean, the more places we try it at, I would be interested to see if they ever run into an issue. But we've tried it in 3 different farms so far, and no one's had an issue with knocking them off. At least not that I know of. I'll ask Claire and make sure that that's accurate, but she didn't mention it. So,
Because you can also put these traps on the ground, right?
I'm sorry.
You could put these traps on the ground also.
You could. The reason why you clip them to the drip line is just so that you can put it right on where the